welcome Burton Lee from Stanford University, Axel Lemaire from Roland Berger, Harald Maher from the Austrian Chamber of Commerce, and your moderator, Thomas Seifert from Wiener Zeitung. A round of applause for our panel. Please stay.
Danke.
Alles klar. Herzlichen Dank.
Gerne.
Wieso kommen da 3 raus? Bitte.
Was?
6, 7, 8, 9.
I'm the moderator here. My name is Thomas Seifert, and it's my pleasure to introduce my panel today for you. We're talking about building a European software powerhouse. That's our topic. And I have here Axel Lemaire from Roland Berger, Burton Lee from Stanford University, and Harald Maher from the Austrian Chamber of Commerce, who also was in government before. And unfortunately, couldn't join us at the discussion we had before, especially with Axel and Burton. I can promise you it's going to be a lively debate, because we had already some discussions before that were was quite a heated debate. So I want to jump right in, and what you discussed, and I want to bring you in on this, was, okay, Burton said, you know, guys, Europe, your software industry, it's small. If I look at the dots, you're not on the map, you're not there. And then Axel said, well, not right, look at the details. So can I bring you back to that point, to this discussion you had before? Burton.
So let me start with some data points. How many of you here are from Germany? So on February 5 of this year in Berlin, the German Minister of Economy, Peter Altmaier, released the new German industry strategy 2030, which was received all across Germany with great interest from a number of sectors. In the document, he includes 13 industries. This is under official German policy. Chemistry, business, Handel, Gewerbe, apologize for some German words, automobile, aerospace, transport, logistics, et cetera, et cetera. Guess what is not listed as an industry in the official German economic policy? Software. In the official German industry strategy for 2030, the word software appears only once in reference to American software companies. So the point I would like to make here today is that if Europe wants to close the gap in market value, this is a slide produced by Holger Schmidt showing difference in market value between Chinese, US, and European companies, the platform companies, platform economy. My point is if that Europe wants to begin to close the gap between China and US, it needs to begin talking about software not only as a productivity tool, but more importantly, as an entire industry unto itself. Software is both. It's an industry and it's a tool. In Silicon Valley, in Canada, in China, UK, we all talk about software as an industry equal to chemistry, to aerospace, to transport, to automotive. That's my point today. This is the strategic Wandel, transformation that I believe Europe and Austria need to make if you really want to become a player at global level and address and close this gap.
So when I was in government as the minister in charge of digital affairs and innovation in France, I never encountered any of the current technological giants describing themselves as representatives of the software industry. Uber, Twitter, Facebook, Google were growing so fast that what they wanted to do is gain new consumers and have favorable regulations, but we're not asking governments and public policies to address their specific challenges as an industry. I think what is important in their success is the fact that they were born out of an ecosystem. And maybe that's what still is lacking in Europe at the moment to help emerge similar big tech giants. It's this capacity, just like in the Silicon Valley, just like in the Shenzhen area in China, to put together startups with research labs, with students and universities and governments at the local and national levels, all working towards the same direction. And hence, you'll find access to fundings, access to talents and people and skills, and access to markets, etc. So all the necessary ingredients to successful policy. So I'm pretty sure we agree on the diagnostic about Europe, but it's in the wording. I wouldn't talk about a software industry.
And Harald, going back to what Burton showed this slide, we saw this big, big huge dots, China, this big huge dots, United States, and then small ones in Europe. And one can ask, you can ask yourself the question, were we just naive and stupid not to close our markets? Because that's what the Chinese did. That's what the Russians did. And I'm not advocating this. I'm just saying, were we too naive? We didn't give our industry room to breathe, whereas the Chinese, they built their own giants. And now they have their own Alibaba and not Amazon. They have their own Tencent. They have their own companies. They have WeChat, and we have WhatsApp, a US application.
I totally go with Burton's approach, because if you look at this market cap size, or on a value size, I do have it in color. It's true. Of course, the US is dominating, and Asia, especially China, is catching up very fast. And Europe is only the small group in orange, really lagging behind. But if you look at it, developer size, you compare the numbers of developers being available and employed in the US and in Europe and in China, numbers are quite different. 25% US, 30% Europe, it's more than the US, and 34% China. So, because of that, you can see we have to realize our potential. And the question is, how do we do this? And this is, I do think, what the panel is all about. So I do think it's not about closing up the market, it's about bringing down regulation. Because we have, up until now, 28 member states, becoming one less maybe, let's see. 28 different set of regulation. We do not have a single digital market. And for that, for example, if you're a startup, have invested quite a lot over the last 20 years, if you're a startup and you want to scale your business, where do you go? You not go to Europe. You not go to a neighboring country. You maybe do a little bit of homework in in France, a little bit in the UK, maybe in the German-speaking area of Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. But for real business development and scaling out of Europe, you go towards Southeast Asia, because there the music is playing, or you go to the US. And then, of course, it's about funding. Where do you get then, for Series A, Series B, enormous amount of investment? You get it in the US, or backed by Israeli funds in the US, or you get it in Southeast Asia. So we are, of course, having a problem with regulation, and we're having a problem with funding, and of course, what Burton and I talked about a lot over the last years, we have to start much earlier in, preparing the people with the right skill set. So starting at the kindergarten level, going up to different levels of schools, a lot to do.
Burton.
I agree with everything you're saying, Harold, but I think we need to be having a little bit different discussion here. And my goal here in coming was to try and shift a little bit the discussion and vocabulary. I think this issue of software is really fundamental. Europe has a huge blind spot, cultural blind spot around software for a number of historical reasons. You find this so the traditional concept of informatics at German universities never included software. Informatik was always intended to be an extension of Mathematik. It was intended to be essentially theoretical information science. And so the teaching of software engineering was never in the original concept of informatics that came out of Germany, the DDR, East Germany, Soviet Union in the 1970s and 80s. It was always this very theoretical mathematical construct. And so even today, most informatics faculties in Germany don't teach software engineering as a formal part of the informatics degree. And in the German model, again, this is it's changing. Things are reforming, but in the kind of original German model, software was pushed off to the Fachhochschulen, the lower level vocational schools. And so looking at software, again, in the traditional Handwerker terms, as a mechanic, as something that only mechanics do, Mechaniker, it really downgrades the social status of software. It puts software at the level of making things with hammers and forges and blacksmith forges. We don't look at software as a low-level activity. We view it as one of the highest level, most sophisticated types of engineering you can do. At Stanford, at MIT, and Silicon Valley, and I think China, Canada, UK, countries also look at this. So I think the issue is, how do we elevate the discussion and standing of software culturally inside Austrian European companies, but also to emphasize that software is a fundamental part of learning computer science in universities.
May I add to that?
I now understand where you're getting to. I agree that computer sciences in the Anglo-Saxon understanding used to be not that developed in Europe because we had that very distinct approach between maths, prestigious, and IT departments, a bit, for the underskilled. This has changed a lot in recent years, and the best graduates will now be engineers with a data science background, and they're very most looked after on the market and get easily hired by companies. So I think the awareness of the needs has massively changed over the recent years. But then maybe something that is underestimated while looking at the European situation from the US or from Asia is how fragmented Europe is. Not only in terms of market access, and yes, if you're a startup and an entrepreneur, you have to start selling in France, for instance, and then adapt to the French regulations, and then start all over again when you address the German market, et cetera, et cetera. So that's 27 or 28 different times where when you arrive in America, then it's easier scalable. But another differentiating factor is the language and the culture. The fact that we have probably nearly 27 different languages make a huge difference. Also 20 different legal systems make a huge difference. So in a way, the best way to address that challenge is to build a stronger Europe, right? But not only commercially and from a regulatory point of view, but also from a cultural point of view.
I would add that the most successful global teams are multicultural teams. Of course, because of the different backgrounds of the employees there, they have different sets of values they, add to the whole business model. But this proves to be very successful. I'm not quite sure that the language problem and the different cultures are that much of a reason, but the regulatory approach, that Europe is definitely a reason. Because if you go to Southeast Asia and you want to scale a product there and you have different cultures in India than in Taiwan or in Singapore or Indonesia, different religious background of your buyers and consumers there. So I don't think this is very much of a reason. But Burton's point is quite right. You're totally right with saying because of historical reasons in putting software in a very specific frame and box and keeping it there for a very long time, this of course had a direct effect on the mindset of different decision makers in different industries in, then only looking towards that very specific box. And we have to, of course, bring down these walls, this silo approach, and I do think create a much more holistic approach in targeting it. As a platform economy is a very diverse economy, changing the whole time, very dynamic. I would love to see that discussion, especially in Germany, because the German economy is so important in its power, especially as the one in France, for the whole European ecosystem. Yeah.
I have two questions from the audience that I want to pick up here. The one is, why do we want to be as big as America / China in building software? And the second one is also related to that maybe. Why is everything about growing? Why is it not more about sustaining? That's what's been asked. What about that?
I take the second one quite freely. I'm a big fan of an eco-social market economy that would provide a very different approach to the approach the Chinese are currently following, and to the totally very individual-centric, very free market-centric approach the US is following. I do think in times like these, confronted with all these eco-social issues we have at hand, we have to find balance. Not bringing balance to the force like in Star Wars, but bringing balance towards three different corners. The one that is very important for providing economic freedom, the freedom to create something new. The other one would be bringing balance that with an approach of social responsibility, because we don't do it alone, we do it in a big concert, especially when this big concert is providing something in harmony. Not in uniformity, in harmony. And the third approach would, of course, mean to bring in the issue of ecological and sustainable responsibility. And it's not an easy task to bring these three different goals into a very balanced approach, but I do think this could be the European way if you compare it to the US way, and the Chinese one that is very much growth-oriented and very much surveillance-oriented.
And another audience question that maybe I can address to you, or Axel, is Ukraine has become Europe's #1 IT outsourcing and software development powerhouse. Would it help us to grow faster? And having been to Lviv and Kiev, may I also add maybe they should go to the next level, not just stay with outsourcing, working for other companies, but develop their own products. What do you think? Is that something for not only Ukraine, we have other European examples. Could it help them?
Yeah, but I'll come to that.
Yeah,
but I would also like to answer the first questions raised by the audience, because I think they're so important. The question is not only the how to address the big challenges of our time, it's the why. And in the why question, Europe is in the best position to address these big environmental challenges, health ones and educational ones. And it might be just easy to say it and reassuring, and we like to hear that, but it's the reality. It's how do you enable innovation, be it softwares, but any kind of technologies, to be put at the service of a higher aim. This is the biggest challenge of our times. And again, with this more balanced approach based on sustainability and solidarity, and which is very European by nature, then I think that companies, entrepreneurs, and startups that will understand that they need to mix the search for a larger purpose and the most powerful technologies will be the winners of tomorrow. So should we keep outsourcing technologies? You know what, with AI, I think increasingly there will be a kind of repatriation of the capacity to produce. And so the question in 10 years' time will be put totally differently. That means that, of course, we need to be able to train and form more developers and try to ensure that a larger number of people understand data science and can use data science notions in their jobs, whatever it is. But I don't think that the Indian or Moroccan or Ukrainian models that are still valid for many companies in outsourcing their IT needs nowadays will still be dominant in 10 years' time. And so I think it will be totally different education challenges and ways at addressing the needs of companies.
And Bert, maybe you want to pick up again the question, why should Europe even try to be, going towards the size of the US industry, the size of the Chinese industry?
Well, there are very concrete reasons why Europe should be aiming to build higher market value companies. Every time that Europe builds a new, strong software company, unicorn, that may be an acquisition target by a larger company. The larger US and Chinese companies will have the cash, they'll have the equity, and they will usually beat out every other European company that might want to acquire this unicorn. So very practically, if you don't have high value, if you don't have high market value companies here, you don't have the same buying power for new mergers and acquisitions of European startups that the US and Chinese companies do. Second point, competition for talent. You simply will never be able to offer the same salary and equity packages, stock options packages that US and Chinese companies can offer. And so this has a very definite negative impact on Europe's long-term ability to compete when US and Chinese companies are always in the best position to attract the best talent and to buy up your best companies. Okay, so those are two very concrete issues. Let's talk, if I may, briefly about Ukrainian IT outsourcing, a very important sector in all of Eastern Europe. Part of the reason for begin to elevate the discussion to talk about the European software industry is we need to begin including Dassault Systems, SAP, Ukrainian IT outsourcing companies, BlaBlaCar, all in the same discussion. These are different aspects, different sub-branches of software. Okay, whether it's software outsourcing or e-commerce or enterprise software, for example. And here in Europe, you tend to chop these up into, oh, here's the Ukrainian IT, Eastern European IT thing. Here's the Western European e-commerce platform thing. You need to become, in my opinion, to bring these into a bigger discussion about and understand that these are part of the same industry, just in different branches. Thirdly, briefly, this issue of sustainability versus growth. We may be good at, in the United States, we may be very good at growth and software culture, but let me tell you, we're really bad at sustainability. I mean, we really suck at it. We build things up, we rip them down, our train system, our homes, our cities. This is not something that the world should be Europe should be looking to for leadership on. This is where the United States and I think the rest of the world can be looking to Europe for leadership on. This sustainability as a cultural value is something that's just not strong in American culture.
Well, so we have something going for it. We're already over time. I'm really shocked. Sorry about that. I have to cut us off here. But I'm pretty pleased with this panel because we hear there is some things going for Europe. There's sustainability. We have the talent. We have ideas. Maybe we can backshore the industries, not rely so much on outsourcing with AI technologies. So seems like, well, the glass is maybe like this bottle, not half, but we're getting somewhere. Almost there. No, not this one.
Oh, this one. Let's choose this one. Right.
Hopefully. So let's hope for Europe. Thank you so much for this wonderful discussion.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Axel. Thank you, Thomas, Bert, and Axel. Yeah. Thank you. Harold will stay with me. Come down here.